The Banana Man by Pwtato. I have a story I want to tell about an inside joke with my friends. Despite the funny nature of it, it disturbs me to this day. The cold cement wall of the basement was dimly illuminated by the fluctuating brightness of the computer monitor, a rough canvas painted with the fuzzy shadows of Mikey and I. Above our figures was a small square window through which a crescent moon could be seen. It was late, past midnight, and we were growing tired. It was the kind of late night when you and your buddy could laugh for hours at things that really weren't that funny, but in the moment were enough to send you to the floor wheezing. Sleep deprivation is a hell of a drug. The screen was playing videos from our favorite YouTubers, and we were growing tired. Mikey laid on the futon below the tiny window, and I laid on a small cot he kept on the floor in front of it. "Dude," he said groggily, "I think it's time to go to sleep. It's almost 2 a.m. What time is Liam's party?" I thought for a few moments before I spoke. Noon, I'm pretty sure." He nodded while looking off blankly. "Would you mind shutting off my computer? You're closer," he said. I reached toward the cluttered desk and slapped the spacebar to pause the video. I then closed everything out and powered off the computer. I laid back down as the room fell pitch black. My eyes soon adjusted to the dark, and I could barely make out the features of the room: the tiny window, the desk, and the doorway in the corner. That doorway was a complete void. It led to the other half of the basement where the stairs were. It was a mostly empty room without any lights, which made it a pain when trying to get to our hangout space in the dark. I stared into the black portal for a few moments. "Hey Ian, what would you do if I slapped your mother?" Mikey asked with almost perfect sincerity. We both burst into roaring laughter at the absurdity of the completely out-of-pocket question. I know what you're thinking, but what can I say? We were both very tired high school seniors. It was a very different time. "I'd slap your dad," I replied with a grin on my face. We sat in silence for a minute as I tried to think of an equally absurd question. I looked at the doorway. The words came to me. "Yo, dude, imagine if the Banana Man was standing in the doorway," I asked, barely holding back my snickering. I looked toward him for his response. He quickly leaned up and shot me a disturbed look. "The what?" he barked. "Who the fuck is the Banana Man?" He looked creeped out, but the ends of his lips curled into a smile. "You don't know the Banana Man?" "No, the fuck I don't," he half shouted, trying to be quiet. "Well, he could be right here and we wouldn't even know. How would we see him?" We both looked at the doorway. When I looked back at him, I could see his imagination working, eating away at him. "Ugh, do me a favor. Don't ever say that kind of shit again," he groaned as he fell back onto the futon. We both chuckled as we tried to get comfortable again. I laid my head down on my pillow and pulled the not-so-comfortable blanket tightly around me. I was very tired, and my eyelids weighed heavily. I knew I would fall asleep shortly, but I would be lying if I said my imagination didn't run wild like Mikey's as I stared into that black doorway. My thoughts kept my eyes on the void for a minute longer before my eyelids finally gave up. I woke up suddenly. I thought I heard a loud scratching sound from somewhere outside the room, but now that I was awake, I could hear nothing. I sat up and strained my ears to listen. There was a perfect silence for minutes on end, but I just couldn't lay back down. It could have just been my imagination, but I had a strange, uneasy feeling I couldn't shake. I thought about the Banana Man and grinned. Such a silly thought to make me nervous. But still, the feeling persisted. Eventually, I turned to Mikey to see if he had woken up too. My hair stood up as I realized Mikey wasn't there. Shit, he must have gone to use the bathroom, I thought. I looked back at the doorway. The darkness was so pure and solid, and it contrasted heavily with the fuzzy darkness of the hangout space. On one hand, it appeared like a wall, but on the other hand, it offered none of the protection a wall provides. I stared for a few more minutes as my unease grew. I figured Mikey would be back in a minute, so I slowly laid back down while keeping my eyes fixed. Many minutes passed as I waited, and my eyes slowly shut. Then the scratching pierced my ears again. I jolted awake immediately and threw my stare at the doorway. My eyes were wide and my heart was pounding. It sounded almost like a dog's nails skittering on the cement floor for only about half a second. "Mikey?" I spoke cautiously. "Is that you?" The cold silence filled my ears. The next few minutes felt like hours. There was no way I was going to lay back down until Mikey came back. After probably about 10 minutes, I decided I was going to take a look through the doorway. After all, what was I really supposed to believe? At worst, it was Mikey playing a joke on me. I quietly slipped my legs off the cot and stood up on the cold floor. My eyes stayed fixed on the doorway, unblinking. I took a few careful steps towards the corner of the room until I was just a foot away. The feeling of unease grew the closer I got. I stopped for a few seconds. Slowly, I took the last step toward the doorway. I quickly whipped my head around the corner to get it over with, half expecting to throw my fists. There was nothing, just a mostly empty room and the wooden staircase. I took it in for a moment and laughed quietly to myself. What am I getting so paranoid about? I thought. I walked back into the room and laid back down on the cot. I pulled the blanket over me and shifted a few times to get comfortable. Before I laid my head down, I glanced over at the doorway one last time. My eyes focused for a moment to see the empty black doorway. Then I noticed at the very top of the doorway, some blurry shape barely piercing the veil of pitch black into the room. I couldn't make out what it was in that second, but it looked yellow. It then quickly sunk back beyond the doorway, along with a sharp scratching sound. My shriek pierced my ears and jolted me awake. I immediately darted my eyes toward the doorway, which was no longer pitch black. It was morning. The scream must have only been in my dream, because Mikey sat awake on the futon, unfazed. "Holy shit, I just had a wild dream," I said to him, my eyes still wide with terror. "Oh yeah?" he asked curiously. "Yeah, it was the middle of the night, right here in this room, but you weren't here. I heard a scratching sound coming from out there, but there was nothing there when I checked." I spoke as I looked off at nothing in particular. When I came back, there was something coming through the doorway, just barely. Then it looked like it jumped back or something. I looked over at Mikey, whose eyes were wider than mine. He was looking at me, and his face was pale. "Are you okay?" I asked. "You're not gonna believe me," he said slowly. "But I swear I had the exact same dream." My heart sank in my chest. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I dreamed the same thing. The scratching sound. I heard it. Except you weren't here. I never got up to check, but I heard that scraping again as something slowly peeked through the doorway. I couldn't tell what it was before I woke up. I'm dead serious." He spoke convincingly. I thought about it for a moment and cracked a smile. "Yeah, sure, dude. I know what you're doing. You're just trying to get back at me for freaking you out last night." He looked annoyed. "No, dude, I swear to God. This isn't a joke. That's actually freaking me out a bit. What are the odds we had the same dream?" I was already walking out of the room as he was saying this, laughing to myself. I didn't want to face the possibility that he was telling the truth. Later that day, we went to celebrate Liam's birthday. It wasn't an actual party, just our small group of friends hanging out. We ate cheap pizza and drank store-brand soda, watched some shitty movies, and had a great time. I told everyone about the Banana Man story, which they thought was hilarious. The more we joked about it, the better I felt. But Mikey's look of discomfort never left his face as we spoke of it. Guys, I seriously gotta go home now. I want to get some actual sleep before school tomorrow, I said as I headed toward the door. Okay, be safe. Don't let the banana man bite, my friend Jason said with a grin on his face. Don't tell me what to do, I shouted back at him as I closed the door behind me. I jogged over to my car, which was parked across the street. It was early summer, but the air had a chill that night. I pulled the door open and fell into the seat, closed the door, and started the car. When I looked up at the street, I froze. On the windshield was a ripe, yellow banana. I knew it was them. I could already tell this was going to be our new big inside joke. A couple of them went out earlier to pick up the pizza, so they must have done it then. Even knowing this, it made me feel uneasy. I felt so ridiculous being creeped out by the goddamn banana man. I took the banana off the windshield and drove home. It was late, and I had a half-hour drive home. As I watched the lines on the highway hypnotically flow beneath my car, I felt myself struggling to stay focused. Despite this, I made it home safely. I thought it was odd that my parents weren't home. My parents aren't the type to go out on a Sunday night, let alone this late. I shrugged it off and walked up the steps onto my porch. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. It was pitch black inside, and when my eyes finally adjusted, my blood turned into ice. Inside, I saw a few things. A futon beneath a small square window. A cot on the floor. A messy desk with a computer. I tried to scream, but there was only silence. My ears were ringing. Cold sweat poured down my face. My arms stiffened and clung close to my body. Then I heard the scratching. Somewhere in the dark room, which I knew was there. It sounded quiet at first, but grew louder as it approached behind me. I was locked in place, frozen, not out of fear, but some kind of force. The scratching was almost in my ear when I felt its presence. Something large loomed behind me. It felt like it was only an inch away. Something dripped onto my shoulder. I woke up in my bed and shouted, "Ian, what's wrong?" I heard my mom say as she cracked the door open. I sat silent for a moment. "Just a bad dream, Mom." She closed the door. I felt numb. My skin still crawled. What the hell kind of dream could feel so real? When did I fall asleep? When did the dream begin? I walked out into the living room after getting dressed. "Mom, where were you last night?" She looked puzzled. "I was right here. You didn't see me?" "I swear I came home and nobody was here last night," I said as I examined the front door. "You must have been really tired. Me and your dad were sitting here watching TV. You just came in with your head down and said nothing. We thought maybe you had a bad day," she said with a look of concern. I thought about what happened the rest of the day. At lunch, I sat down at the table where all my friends sat. Everyone seemed like they were in a good mood. Everyone except Mikey. He stared at the table with a slightly wide-eyed expression. His face was pale. "You feeling all right?" Jason said after poking Mikey in the arm. "Yeah," Mikey said in a low voice. "Just didn't sleep well." He continued to stare at the table. After the bell rang and everyone got up to leave, I walked alongside Mikey. "Hey, Mikey, did you have any other weird dreams?" This broke him from his spell. He quickly glanced at me from the corners of his eyes. "Let's not talk about it," he spoke again in a low voice. He walked off in a hurry. Things were relatively normal after that. My friends and I continued to hang out as usual, and I didn't have any more of those dreams. Despite this, the Banana Man firmly planted himself as a permanent inside joke amongst us. It's been a few years since then, but it still comes up from time to time. The only thing that bothers me is that Mikey still never talks about it. Whenever he hears that name, it's like some sort of dread washes over him. Part of me understands where he's coming from. As ridiculous as it sounds, I still wonder sometimes if what we had experienced was just some shared paranoia or something more. Now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder if he's had any more of those dreams since then. I haven't slept over at his place since, but even when we hang out, we never go down in the basement. We'll have to ask him again soon. I'll make an update if I do. Thank you guys for listening to this story by Pwtato. This is part 1 of a 2-part series. I appreciate you stopping by. Please like and subscribe, and if you have a story of your own, please email me at awfultoastreads@gmail.com. But until next time, goodbye.